my name is Sarah. I hope you are all having a fantastic day. For those of you who celebrated Christmas this week, I hope you really enjoyed your time with family and friends, and maybe Santa or that special someone in your life left something under the tree for you that you're really going to enjoy. I thought right now would be the perfect time to do a video on Ant Plus and Bluetooth for those of you who were delivered that special something, whether it's an indoor trainer or some sort of accessory for your bike, for your indoor pain cave. Either you're moving to a different platform or you have different equipment. It might help you navigate some of the confusion surrounding Ant Plus and Bluetooth and which protocol might be right for you, why you would choose one or the other, the pros and cons of both, or why you might need to use one or the other. So let's get right into it. So briefly, I want to start with what each of the two protocols actually is, how they work in a very basic sense, and give you a better understanding of how the two protocols might interface and react to your sensors or your equipment that you might be using for cycling or even running. So I'll start with Bluetooth because Bluetooth is the protocol that pretty much everybody out there with any modern electronic devices has some exposure to. You probably have some kind of Bluetooth headphones or Bluetooth communication between your device and some other peripheral. It's a very kind of simple wireless system. It communicates on the 2.4 gigahertz band, and it's meant to carry a signal live. So most often we see Bluetooth being used to carry sound, kind of like a radio. It will take the sound in real time and move it to a different device wirelessly so you can hear it in real time. If you're watching a video with headphones on, you hear your sound synced up with the video, ideally, if you have solid equipment, and everybody's happy. And what happens with that signal is it basically disappears as quickly as it's utilized. It doesn't really have the intention to go anywhere. It's not really recorded. It's just meant to transmit to a receiver, and the receiver gets that signal. So Bluetooth has been around for a long time. It was developed in the late 90s with really the very early iterations of Bluetooth that people may remember, which is the wireless headsets to talk to early cell phones. And that became more ubiquitous in the early 2000s. But they were a little bit unreliable. The radio signal was poor. The drain in terms of battery life was very high because Bluetooth was always on. It was always transmitting. So in 2009, Bluetooth Low Energy, or BLE, came out, which allowed sensors to actually go to sleep and stop transmitting or receiving, which helped open up possibilities for different peripheral devices. And then a little bit later than that, 2016 came along and Bluetooth Smart became the new nomenclature. And in that time, that protocol was expanded to be able to be a little bit more two-way communication. So as opposed to something just being a transmitter or a receiver, either one could do both, and they can talk to each other. And that becomes probative in terms of cycling when we talk about things like smart trainers. So we want our smart trainer to supply data to our screens, something like power or cadence or something else. And then we want our screens or our devices to be able to talk back to the trainer to say, this is what I want the resistance to do, or this is what kind of power output I'm looking for, so this is what I'm going to do to adjust the feedback from your trainer to get the required response. So that's great. That's what Bluetooth Smart really does, is it takes what once was a one-way communication and turns it into two-way. And then these new programs have extrapolated on that to be able to take that data and manually record it. So you're able to track your information over time. So your power output on your trainer, while naturally Bluetooth doesn't record it, these programs will specifically talk about ZWIFT because I think that's where a lot of people are entering the market. Now you're able to record the whole ride and see the graph of your power, things like heart rate, cadence over time. So the program does that type of work for you. And they put a lot of development into doing that because that's not what the protocol was originally designed for. But because of the commonplace nature of Bluetooth and the accessibility to create apps for things with native Bluetooth functionality, it became more and more important for these programs to kind of retrofit Bluetooth as a protocol to fit the needs of its users. And they've done a very good job with it. Nowadays, you're gonna find a lot of your exercise or fitness sensors come with dual capability. You might find some with Ant Plus only and some with Bluetooth only, but a lot of them are hitting the market with both transmitters and receivers included in them because they understand that in 2019 and soon to be 2020, they need to have this type of flexibility if they want to reach the largest target market. So now I want to talk about Ant Plus for a second, and this is something that's a little less familiar to most people in the consumer market unless you have been in the fitness market for a while. Ant Plus was developed back in 2004, so it's a little bit newer but still very mature. And it was created specifically by Garmin for the purpose of exercise and fitness devices. It carries data a little bit differently. It stores data in packets in periods of time, and it serializes them with the specific intent of recording that data and then putting that in order. So it serializes the packets of data with the intention that a receiving unit, whether it's a head unit like a computer or some kind of outside program, it packets that data so for the purpose of recording it. So the sensors are doing a lot of the work, not just the computer. The computer is doing the work to stitch that together, but it's getting nice and neat and organized data from the sensors to do that. Again, like the Bluetooth protocol, it is a 2.4 gigahertz carrier. It transmits a little bit differently. It's not a constant communication, but rather it kind of cycles about once or 4 times a second, I believe, is the known interval. So it packets out information a little bit differently than Bluetooth because of the nature of the data being transmitted. You're not really losing a ton, but it's almost regaining that connection. So if you do have a brief dropout, it's continuing to try to recycle that connection, which is a little bit different than how Bluetooth works. It makes it a little bit more ideal for some of these exercise or fitness trackers because of some of the things that we might face in terms of originally outdoor riding, which has been moved to the indoors. You don't really need to get too far into how it works. Just understand that you have a transmitter and you have a receiver, similarly to Bluetooth, but the data packets and the way that it works is a little bit different than Bluetooth and is a little bit more specifically designed for the exercise and fitness trackers. So I just got through kind of explaining the 2 different protocols, and I specifically said that Ant Plus is a more fitness or exercise specific protocol, and it's more mature and developed for that specific purpose. So you might be asking, why the heck would I even consider going to Bluetooth? It doesn't make sense. It's not built for this type of mechanism, and it's been retrofitted to do something it wasn't designed to do, so why would I pick that? Well, there are a lot of benefits to using Bluetooth, even for your exercise and fitness devices, especially with indoor training. So I'm going to go through some of those categories and where the pros and cons of the 2 different protocols are that might help you make a decision or understand why you need to use a particular protocol over the others so that you can get a good solid setup for your system. So let's start with why Bluetooth was even introduced and why it might be the proper choice for you in terms of your indoor training setup, and that's compatibility. I think what happened is a lot of these programs, things like ZWIFT and Trainer Road and Ruby, they came to market and they wanted to penetrate the devices that were the most convenient and usable for users. And nowadays, fewer and fewer people are having primary computers, or they're using small laptops, or they're really doing most of what they need to do on things like tablets and mobile phones. Well, the problem is with that is that Ant Plus isn't supported on all these devices natively. In fact, most devices do not support Ant Plus natively. Samsung, Sony, and a couple other brands have made it a point to put Ant Plus receivers inside of their devices, but many of them, including things like Apple, they do not include those types of receivers. So it requires you to use some kind of dongle or some kind of outside handler to get that type of feedback feed forward with Ant Plus devices. And that adds a lot of friction to entering the market for people who might want something just simple so that it works. So it became a push for these companies, both in the sensor market and the program market, to come up with Bluetooth support so that anybody with a cell phone or a tablet or a laptop can really get in and enter the market and use their programs without extra dongles and connections and things like that. So because Bluetooth is available on pretty much every modern device now, it opens up tons of possibilities for what platforms these companies or these programs like ZWIFT and Trainer Road and so on and so forth can release to. So it's going to open up their market. So Bluetooth is extremely convenient, and you pretty much are guaranteed to have some type of device that has the capability to run the program program and communicate via Bluetooth right out of the box. Number 2, I want to talk about range. Bluetooth has a pretty kind of static range. Most devices are going to be somewhere around that sweet spot of 25 feet for their effective communication range, and it has a very strong, fast communication within that range. It really becomes helpful for inside your home when you need to maybe put your receiving device a little bit further away from your bike. Maybe you've got your computer across the room like I do. That might be ideal for some people to use Bluetooth. ANT+, while the protocol is capable of up to 100 feet for range, most of these transmitters and receivers have throttled that range purposely to an effective range between maybe 3 and 5 feet maximum. And the reason for that is because there are so many sensors, and because these are primarily used for outdoor use of the sensors. You might find yourself trying to pair up to your devices near a race or a group ride, and all of a sudden you're picking up thousands of devices and you'll never find your own. If it's got a 100-foot range, you'll never find the right devices with these 5-digit or 6-digit unique identifier numbers. So if you can just step away maybe 10, 15 feet out of the range of the other devices, you'll be able to pair up and find your devices. So it removes the interference from other similar devices communicating on the same wavelength or protocol, and it allows you to be a little bit more focused in a nice tight locus with maybe your head unit or your watch capturing the data and your sensors on your bike that are in real close proximity. But that really wasn't designed for indoor use, so we've had to kind of adapt to this limitation for ranges for indoor use. And usually that comes by way of some sort of extension cable with USB and then connecting to a dongle and placing the dongle closer to your bike. I can get probably a good solid 8 feet away with my dongle, but I will see maybe a couple of dropouts with something like my heart rate monitor, which has a shorter transmission range. So I just throw it real close to my bike. I get within maybe 3 feet, and then I never have any dropouts. So depending on your setup, you might find that one range or the other based on how you have your peripherals or your main receiver set up. You might find that Bluetooth really does work better for you, or ANT+ works better for you. If you're not able to get that extension cord nice and close to you, or get that ANT+ dongle off your computer, you might want to stick with Bluetooth. It might work a little bit better for you. The third thing I want to talk about is transmission. Because Bluetooth does generate that signal live and constantly, it is a little bit quicker. It's not really anything that most people are going to notice, but you just get that microsecond faster that transmission of, power to the screen or information to the trainer. Bluetooth is a faster protocol. It's designed to be that way. On the flip side of that, you have ANT+ that's sending out those packets, which takes a little bit more time, but recovering that transmission during some sort of interference or dropouts, I think, is a little bit more stable for most people, because it's sending out so many packets of information that it can miss a few without wondering what the heck is going on. It knows that that's a possibility, and it can miss a certain number of these packets and kind of fill in the blanks for you, whereas Bluetooth, after a certain amount of seconds being disconnected, unless you have the computer or device kind of trying to constantly reconnect and repair, it might lose the signal entirely and you have to go through the whole manual repairing process, whereas ANT+ will recover more automatically in most cases. And that brings us to the next thing, which is connectivity. You will get people who have anecdotal experiences in both regards. Some people have a hard time with ANT+, some people have a hard time with Bluetooth. It really depends on your setup. Bluetooth, because there's more traffic on that Bluetooth wavelength because of all the different devices around it, and if you're living in something like an apartment with more people around you, there may be more susceptibility to interference, especially with these devices now. They're set up to kind of automatically pair with new devices and constantly be searching. You might find that there's a little bit of conflict on the protocol for which one your device or computer wants the attention of. So some people struggle with dropouts with Bluetooth because there's always this traffic and this kind of conflict between speakers, headphones, cell phones, TVs, computers, the people downstairs. A lot of people have a really tough time when they bring their devices to the gym. All of a sudden, everybody's got these Bluetooth headphones and stuff on, and they can't get their stuff to connect. ANT+ is very sensitive to distance, but if you have the dongle set up close to your devices and you don't have it kind of put up against something that's going to interfere with it, you will get a very strong signal with these. So a few of the low-hanging fruit items in terms of interference with ANT Plus is you want to get it off your computer, because the large amount of power coming from a computer or laptop can drown out this tiny little dongle and may give it a hard time doing its receiving duties. And then if you're going to put it on an extension, try not to kind of like bury it in the floor. Get it so it's at least pointed a little bit towards your devices so that receiver signal isn't just going nowhere. If you can point it straight up and down, there are some extension cables that will kind of give you a stand to drop this into so it can face up. That's ideal, but in most cases, if you can get this close enough to your device, you will have no issues with signal. The next thing, which for me is a hands down win for ANT Plus, is the flexibility of use. Bluetooth capability on these devices is one transmitter, one receiver. That's it. So if you're using something on Bluetooth, you can only have one pairing, at least at this point, at the end of 2019, you can only have one marriage between signals and nothing else. It becomes extremely limiting when you want to pair your exercise devices with multiple things at a time. So I'll give you a good example of that. If you want to marry your signal from your heart rate monitor and your trainer, or your power meter and your cadence sensor, not only to ZWIFT, but you want to run a backup on your head unit on your bicycle in case maybe your power goes out, you don't want to lose your exercise data, you can't do that with Bluetooth. If you have Bluetooth only sensors, as soon as that signal is usurped by one of those devices, it's not allowed to communicate with the other. ANT Plus, on the other hand, allows you to connect to as many devices as you want at a time. So I can take a heart rate monitor and communicate to my watch, my head unit, ZWIFT, some other head unit, some other device, some cell phone. There really is no conceivable limit to the amount of pairings I can make with that single device. And that becomes very effective when you're using kind of redundant recording, or if you want a heads-up display somewhere else. It becomes actually a lot more common for many people who train very substantially on bikes and on runs, and they really want that backup data. ANT Plus allows you to do that. You can have as many receivers and transmitters as you want, and just keep in mind, Bluetooth is only one connection. Many people will just be in a position where they have to split their connection. If they have a device that does both, they're going to have to use the Bluetooth capability to talk to their computer or tablet or what have you for ZWIFT, and they'll use the ANT Plus capability to talk to something like a head unit or a watch device. So if you're looking into buying sensors that you want to add to your bike, you're probably best to buy something capable of both. I would recommend staying away from things that are Bluetooth only, especially if you are looking to grow in the sport. And the last thing I want to talk about is data integrity. And I think, considering what I explained at the beginning of the video, it's going to be no surprise that the data integrity that you're going to get from ANT Plus is going to be far superior and more mature than what you're going to get from Bluetooth. And what do I mean by that? If you are getting further into the sport and you are using more advanced peripherals, things like power meters. An example is I am using the Garmin Vector power meters, pedals, and those are capable of taking in more data than just that raw power number. It creates what's called pedal dynamics, for those of you who are not familiar. It takes the balance between the power between the two pedals. It takes where my peak power phase is coming from. It takes where my full power phase is coming from, the offset. It takes a lot of very interesting, usable data, but something I wouldn't look at live, something I want to record for after the fact. And it takes that data and it plots it on a graph. So if I need to work on something in terms of technique, or I notice that one leg is substantially weaker than the others, I can do something to offset that and perhaps develop that weakness, if you will. ANT Plus is designed to do that because of the way it packets data. Bluetooth, as it happens right now, is not really designed or capable of doing that. These companies have not programmed in that capacity to even communicate all that data via Bluetooth, let alone record it. So right now there are some limitations in terms of even ANT+, where ZWIFT and Trainer Road and the other programs don't record it, but you can still capture that data on a head unit. But I think down the line with demand going forward, because that data is available, ZWIFT and Trainer Road, Groovy, they're going to record that data for you so that you don't have to necessarily save it on multiple devices, that it will have that data available for you and send it to something like Garmin Connect or Training Peaks or other handler for your exercise activities, and that way you can review that after the fact. Bluetooth is not capable of doing that right now. So if you're using things like pedal dynamics or on the run, your heart rate monitor, many of the higher end ones like the Ticker X or the HRM Tri or HRM Run by Garmin, those carry a lot of dynamics that might be helpful to you. It gives you more accurate cadence numbers, vertical oscillation, things that might be helpful if you're developing technique in something that some of the data geeks out there are really interested in. It may not apply to you if you're watching this video and you're looking at a very simple setup, but it's something to consider when you're looking at your ecosystem and how you want to set up the protocols. If that data is important to you, make sure you have your ANT+ sensors available and that you're recording that until that's made available for recording on these third-party programs. So the last thing I want to close on is what you might need or what your setup might require on the different platforms that you're going to use. I'll start with ZWIFT because ZWIFT is going to be kind of the most confining, and then I'll touch on a couple of the other platforms that I know of and their different compatibility structure that might be applicable to you. So I'll start with mobile devices, and I'm going to split this up into Android and Apple because they are a little bit different. We'll start with Android mobile devices, and this is going to apply to tablets and cell phones. So currently it is December 2019. Right now, to use the mobile platform, you're really looking at using Bluetooth. ZWIFT has recently, in the last month, released an update that allows the ANT+ to be utilized. So if you have something like a Samsung device or a Sony device that has the ANT+ receiver built into it, they are starting to open up that capability, but right now it's limited to heart rate monitors. They are expanding that capability, and perhaps by the time you're watching this video, we might have a release that allows the cadence, power, and controllable trainer element to be used via ANT+. So that is coming soon. So if you have an Android device with the ANT+ capability built in, make sure you look that up. Just because it's Android does not mean it's ANT+ capable. It has to be a specific branded device. So out of the box, right now, things like Samsung's and Sony's and a couple other brands will run the ANT+ as soon as ZWIFT has released that capability. Other programs like Groovy and Trainer Road, to kind of talk about the top two other programs, they have had that native ANT+ capability for some time now. So ZWIFT is the one that needs to catch up with that. When we're talking about the iOS side, so your iPads or your iPhones, those do not have any ANT+ capability built into them on any device. So out of the box, you're looking at Bluetooth. Now, if you are looking at a program that supports ANT+ like Trainer Road or Groovy, or when ZWIFT does support ANT+ and you want to capitalize on your ANT+ devices, there are dongles that are created for your cell phone. That there are little ANT+ dongles that you can plug in right to your charge port that will allow you to open up ANT+ capability. I think what it might need is a from the App Store is a bit of a plug-in, a radio handler for the ANT+. But the device itself is capable of reading that dongle and has been for a long time, and people have used these ANT+ dongles for other programs. So right now for ANT+ on both platforms of mobile, we're kind of waiting on ZWIFT to finish up their development of communicating on mobile via ANT+. The next platform, the kind of intermediary platform that a lot of people are getting into is Apple TV. Apple TV out of the box, again, we are talking Bluetooth. It is limited in terms of Bluetooth, which I'm surprised that we're not looking at expanded models of this yet. It only allows you to connect to, I believe it's 3 Bluetooth devices, and one of those slots for Bluetooth is already partitioned to the remote. So the remote communicates via Bluetooth, and that leaves only 2 slots available. And if you're familiar with ZWIFT at all, to get the primary setup, you need 3. You need power, cadence, and heart rate to get everything. You can dump one if you want. You can dump heart rate or cadence and just focus on your power and one of the other 2. Or there are ways to work around that. A lot of people use their cell phone to the side and open up the ZWIFT companion app. It is capable of acting as a handler for your devices, so it could act as a Bluetooth handler, so you can, let's say, connect your heart rate and your cadence to the Apple TV, and then use the companion app to talk to your trainer. You can use any combination of those things as long as you're using the Bluetooth devices for most of your cellular devices or mobile devices, but that's kind of the workaround for that. There's another workaround that's a little bit more hardline, and that is it's called a cable adapter or dongle, and it's cable spelled like the word cable, C-A-B-L-E, and it is all capital letters. And what that does is actually extends your Bluetooth capability, and I believe it actually allows for some ANT+ capability as well. I do not use an Apple TV. I am definitely not the expert in this regard, but I've done a little bit of research around it. And what I'll do is that link a video by Shane Miller. He does a great job talking about this device and how it works and how to integrate it into your system. And if I can dig that up, I will leave that in the links down below so you guys can look in what's best for your system for somebody who's actually set that up live, and you can see how it works, because he can do a far better job than I can. And the last platform I'll talk about is the computer-based platform. This is where things get a little bit confusing and a little bit hairy, but there's a way to use this protocol pretty seamlessly. You just have to be familiar with your setup. So whether you're using PC or Mac and you want to use ANT+ devices, you're going to require this dongle, and because of the power source in the computer or laptop, get it off the computer. It's going to work for you the best. Take this little guy, hook it up to an extension cable, throw it near your bike. The computer knows what to do with it. The program knows what to do with it. You don't need to be a technician to figure it out. It's plug and play. Everything else is going to be done for you. It's very simple. Bluetooth may get a little bit more complicated. ZWIFT specifically has a hard time using the native Bluetooth in computers to use the program. Things like Trainer Road and Ruby, especially Trainer Road, has gotten a lot better with saying, okay, we're aware of how native Bluetooth in the computer works, and we're going to allow that to communicate with the trainer back and forth. ZWIFT isn't quite there yet with some of that development, so some people still require one of these little dongles, but it's a Bluetooth Smart or BLE dongle to make that feed-forward connection between something specifically like their smart trainer. But that's okay, because you don't even need to connect directly to the computer at all, especially if your computer is far away when it comes to Bluetooth. The biggest thing that people use in terms of their computer to make all those Bluetooth connections is they get on their phone, they open up the ZWIFT companion app, and let the phone act like the Bluetooth carrier signal, and everything is good in the world. It works really well. It's close to your devices, so you don't really have many dropouts. You're not too far away. So you don't really need any dongle to use Bluetooth as long as you've got this little communication device in between. So it's something that's kind of device dependent. Some people have said their Bluetooth native has worked. I have not had any luck with native Bluetooth in the computer. Working with ZWIFT, I've had to use a dongle, but I don't use the Bluetooth. I use the ANT+, and it just works better for me, and that's what I use for my peripherals. So in closing, I hope that this kind of compare and contrast between Bluetooth and ANT+ has been helpful for you. It is going to be contingent on what you're using it for, what your setup is, how much maybe muss and fuss you want to put into your setup, and what you want to use. As soon as you kind of get a setup and a workflow in place, it becomes a little bit easier. But your first time setup and understanding where everything is going is going to be the most difficult. But I promise you, it will get easier once you're settled in and you have a routine or a infrastructure set up for ANT+ or Bluetooth. Personally, I am a huge fan of ANT+ for a lot of the reasons that I've mentioned. It's a lot more mature of a platform, it's more flexible, I'm just more accustomed to using it. I think it's designed for the exercise and fitness trackers. Bluetooth may come along in terms of development, but I just don't think it's there yet. Several years ago, people said that BLE was going to be the ANT+ killer. It just hasn't gotten there, and it really hasn't advanced much. It hasn't really gone too far beyond the feed forward that's required for these programs. I think the development kind of hit a standstill, in my opinion. But it doesn't make Bluetooth a bad protocol to use. It works very well. It does the job. It might be perfect for your setup and what you need to use it for. But I hope this video was helpful so that you can make a proper assessment of your setup and what you need to use, because I know that getting into this now more than ever before has become more and more complicated, and there's so many different things to consider, and all you want to do is take your new toy and plug it in the wall and have everything work. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you liked this video or got some use out of this video, please hit that thumbs up button. It helps the video and the channel quite a bit. Subscribe if you haven't already. Please leave any comments, questions, or input if you have any personal experience that might be helpful to other users. Leave it in the comments down below. I will try to leave some timestamps for the different parts of this video as well in the pinned comment down below. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. Again, I hope you all had a fantastic holiday season, and I wish you a Happy New Year, and I will catch you in the next one.